last day of April, April 30th, that is, 2023, and we're focused on a report out for the digital world in a town hall meeting format. Grateful for those that are in attendance, and we're going to jump on to just simple report out, review, then general Q&A. Grateful for those that are here helping with support-related questions, if there are any. If not, that's wonderful. This is a private membership association, and some of the things we'll talk about may be forward-looking and comments there. We'll jump right into some of the things that are continuing to advance this week. We're getting some feedback. Come on. Let's see. Wally, I think that might be in your world. So we're continuing to advance some of the actual build out for Clear Homes. For those of you that are not aware what that is, it's an ecosystem where there's actually, and I'll go through a timeline real quick. Wally, we're getting some feedback from you. Yeah, so this is basically the timeline that we're focused on, and there's actually there's a better deck that reports out on this particular thing. But the net is there's continued development around some of the Clear Homes. We're actually going through phases. Maybe I can show you some of the detailed photos. There's a design phase that basically, this is a rendered phase, but it goes through every part and piece of it, whether it's how they connect up, how sewage systems work, how electric systems work, all of it. Testing. Maybe it's Ray. Ray, I'm trying to clean this up here for you, buddy. So Clear Homes continues to advance, and we hope to have actual groundbreaking in some of the pieces there within some of the environments within Utah. There's 3, possibly 4 different build environments. 2 weeks ago, we talked about it with Carl. One of them is Midway, Utah. The second one is Strawberry and Spanish for St. George, and then also up in Ogden. So continue to report out there. There's been some advancements this last week, primarily working with folks within Nevada as well as Arizona, as well as Texas. So rounding up some of the environments within those ecosystems. One of the most important environments that we've seen revolves around the Hopi Indians and some of the realities that are there. I shouldn't say realities, but some of the history that is there that is massively important. It's had the opportunity to observe. I don't know if Charles is on this call, and he actually did what's called in Hawaii a hanai in my world. And is that what this? Yeah, so on the right, you can kind of see how it works. But there was a similar one that was done this last week. This individual is actually Hopi, and he took us around to 4 or 5 different places, the gentleman on the left. And his daughter actually burnt up in a vehicle. So just a couple months ago, she passed away from burning inside of a vehicle. And this other gal was actually hanai'd in, which was the equivalent of adoption within the Hopi ecosystem. Very special opportunity to just witness and observe something I'd never seen before in my life. And some of the things were so sacred that I won't even discuss them here. But it's very serious, the adoption in. And one of the things that really was eye-opening for me was we're one world and one people. And I know that we talk about that, but we really are. We're in this all together. And, when we go through different turmoil or different trials in life, it's interesting how that becomes more and more evident as it becomes more of a reality. And maybe it's just something as we get older that we observe, at least me personally, but that circle of life and that connection, that one community and one world, and the responsibility that we all have to one another based upon talents and gifts and environments that we've had opportunities to learn from and grow within is very important. So grateful for some of those events and evenings, so to speak. There's something that I'd like to review with all of you, primarily a new business unit that is called Clear Finance. And Clear Finance, for those of you that have actually used like a Clear payment card in the historical so this one particularly ties to some of the Clear United elements. But for about 4 years, we've been toying within this industry, and it's actually, we plan on November of this year, actually launching formally an ecosystem that ties to it. And at the end of this, I'm going to ask you a question, because we're in the building out phase. And this trusted body, I wanted to make sure had an opportunity, one, to see it, but also two, to actually provide an opinion and a perspective, because there's some questions that we have around how this should actually go to market. And so what I'll do is I'll talk to you quickly about what it is. So the ability to enable decentralized payments for payroll, rewards, or just general payments. So maybe a purchaser and a consumer, or a merchant and a consumer doing a transaction with payments, maybe a loyalty point system with rewards, and then general payroll. It would look at, from a competitive landscape, something like this. I'm going to go ahead and show this in a better way. Let's see if this pops in. So imagine the different competitors out there that have different cards, and there's a couple things that have been updated within the last couple months, but you can kind of see how we see a landscape kind of playing out. This primarily is enabled because of this decentralized system that the digital world enables, which is really a financial system replacement. But if you build it based upon decentralized identity and payment systems, this is kind of how it would work. In some ways, it may look complicated, but this is how we actually connect up the fiat world, or the digital world, connecting into the combination of Visa rails, MasterCard rails, SWIFT systems, ACH systems, virtual Visa, and physical Visa, all being wrapped into the digital payment system. So you'd have the ability to issue cards. Now think about this from a standpoint of branded cards. So it's not necessarily just a Clear card, but it could be other cards that tie to it. You could do things when you usually come off of a digital asset, if it's in a jurisdiction with no tax, and you come into an environment that has fiat assets and it does have tax, that could be a taxable event, etc. But it'll actually help you to manage, what is being spent, how it's being spent, and all the parts and pieces. As far as from a geography standpoint, we're looking at North America, Europe, and Asia Pac. These are also the same places that we're doing some of the identity and license plates as well. So some of these regions. So if you're not in these regions and it's something that you're interested in, please let us know. It may look complicated, but the goal is for the user to have it very seamless and very simple for them. But this is how we have to basically juggle it today, and how it kind of ties into existing systems. Now, for those of you that are aware, some of the most advanced systems in the world is actually tied to Amazon. So they have a thing called Amazon One that's tied to some of the Prime ecosystems, which basically uses your palm and links your palm to an actual Visa system, multiple different Visas per se, okay? Where are we at? And George, we're getting feedback from you, bud. I'm going to go ahead and just mute you if we can. So imagine these things being able to be fully branded. Most of you have watched us work with different countries or kingdoms or nations or states, and maybe even counties, to offer digital assets, whether that's a governance system, but there needs to be a payment side of it. So how do those payments actually interface with the rest of the world, unless you want to go and get all the vendors on to actually have a closed loop system, which that can happen. But one of the actual environments we hope to work with first is actually the state of Utah. So we've met with Utah, Nevada, Arizona, and soon to be Texas, and then we'll loop back around with the Pacific topic, which I'll touch on within this presentation today. So again, imagine you've got physical cards and then you've got digital cards, similar to what you would see with an Apple Pay, Samsung Pay, or Google Pay, and then they're fully customizable. So they have the ability to link in other assets. When I say other assets, I'm talking about other wallets that would then tie in assets. So some people are familiar with Clear Life, Hawaiian Life, Tuvalu Life, Fiji Life, Vanuatu Life. There's other things like Samsung Life, if you haven't seen that, or Saudi Life. But the Life app is actually where your assets are stored and derived keys are stored, as well as where you prove your digital existence in these ecosystems. So there's abilities for people to be able to have access to cash and send cash in real time. I should say send digital assets in real time that can then convert into cash per se. So the ability for, if you remember how you had a merchant that got paid, let's say someone wanted to pay for a hotel room, and you could actually pay everyone that got paid, including, like in Fiji was actually where the use case was, where the superannuation fund would get paid, which is similar to like Social Security in the United States. So the different departments would automatically get paid. And then if there was a return that needed to happen, a clawback could actually happen, and it's tied to the same transaction. So imagine the ability for multiple environments to be able to actually have accounting and auditing done in real time. I know most of you may not realize what that is, but it's a massive potential future. It's not built out yet, but the capabilities of it are definitely there. The different support sides of it, different currencies, different countries, different APIs. This ties to some of how you can use it on tablets, laptops, desktops, etc. Cross-platform from, not just normal merchant physical card terminals, but virtual card terminals, as well as, or interfaces, as well as Mac, laptop, Windows, PC. The way to basically go to market, for those of you that are aware with Clear United, it's the same model. It's basically sold directly from people telling people about it, different partners and brands. The brands tied to different strategic relationships, which we'll talk about one at the end, and then governmental entities such as states, provinces, counties, kingdoms, etc. And so you'll find some of you may question, why are you going to these places? Why are you meeting with these individuals? And really the direct government deals are very important to be able to be done. And so that's why we're working them directly. This talks a lot about, again, the simple payroll, rewards, and payments sides of it. And this ties to the question. So this is where I'm going to hopefully get some feedback from some of you. Let me frame this for you. Do you see a future where digital assets and physical assets and fiat assets could actually mix? And what I mean by that is someone took a fiat asset like a dollar, and I won't be specific on what country, let's just say it's a dollar or a dala or a dillo, but it's a currency that is a physical currency that then actually purchases a real asset, kind of like these. So what you're looking at here, each state that actually is authorized gold or silver as currency within their state constitution, because states have the legal right for that, they actually create what's called a gold back. So this is actually a clear wrapped piece of gold that looks like, as a matter of fact, I have one in my wallet. Oh, I don't have my wallet with me. But it actually can be spendable, and it's like a dollar bill. So, but if you melt it down, is it equivalent to the amount of gold in there? And so the question is this something that you believe that the market would want to purchase if it were in digital format, but backed by a physical gold? So do you see fiat currencies purchasing a gold or silver type asset that is then digitized for general consumption by a consumer? Feedback, thoughts, guidance, crazy warning lights.
So yeah, I have a question, Michael. So I get exactly what you're saying, but how, okay, so I take my fiat money and I buy some gold backs. And then you say that we can digitize that?
So when you actually purchase it, you don't get delivered the gold backs. You get a inventory of the gold backs that is represented by a digital asset. So
then I would go to a store and I could buy a dozen eggs, and then what happens?
So this great question. So imagine an ecosystem where you have a dollar that's a currency like a US dollar that actually purchases a store of these types of assets. So a gold asset that is actually digitized. And then if you want to actually convert it onto a card, and that's why it's tied into this Clear Finance business opportunity, you can actually convert it onto a card that then you can go and buy those dozen eggs that you're referring to. But you're doing it as a loan against a physical asset. So let's say that you purchased $8,000 in gold backs that are digitized, and in real time you want to transfer or you want to loan against those the ability to actually have those spendable. And then you have the choice to actually pay back the credit card or the Visa or the debit card, or you can actually use the assets that were collateralized for you before, but you're using the digital medium to transfer in real time. Does that make sense?
So, yeah, so I would have, let's say, $10 of goldbacks in my account that I would then digitize, and then I could load them onto my Visa, and I could go to the store and buy a dozen eggs, and then I would pay my Visa with the goldbacks that I have in my account.
You could do that, or you could just pay it with a payment transfer, or you could, some people could say, hey, this is what it's tying back to. Remember this right here? Say again, Charles?
My mistake, sorry.
All good, bud. So it goes back to the payroll rewards and payment side of it. So if people actually got, and this is where we're originally targeting it, tied to payroll. So if they actually got their normal payroll, instead of going from an employer to a US dollar bank account, they go right into a store of value that is what the world thinks is a store of value in gold, etc., and then uses a digital payment to actually move that around. And then either the next month's payment can come in and offset the cost, like the eggs, or they could actually use the prior month's balance that is backed by a digital asset. Does that make sense?
That makes total sense. And where do I sign up? Like right now?
Okay. And that's what I was trying to understand, because many folks, including yourself, are like, how do I do this? How do I do this? And you know that we're always cranking on stuff. That's why this type of a thing has just been popped out and reviewed. But so this is something, from what you're saying, this is something that you would have a high level of interest in being involved with and utilizing for your life. Yeah?
Oh, for God's sake, of course. Oh my God. I'm telling you, where do I sign up? I'll do it right now.
Scale of 0 to 10.
13,
Okay.
15,
it's that
100.
real. Okay. So that's beautiful.
For me, this is it. Like, this is what I've been waiting for since I've met you.
That's
and
awesome.
before.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Okay. Anybody else? Thoughts, feedback?
Yeah. Mike, so if you're taking a loan out against your gold backs, in some instances, that would be a tax-free transaction because you don't, I mean an interest-free transaction because you don't pay interest on the loan.
Well, technically it could be, and I'm not a tax attorney or advice in here, but technically if you're not touching a US dollar and you're operating in jurisdictions that are not within that ecosystem, once you hit a Visa, there's a potential taxable event. But if you don't ever go to that Visa, if you go from employer to a gold asset to then a digital asset, and your merchant accepts a digital asset in representation for a fiat asset, which is much better than any of the current systems humanity has today, then technically you haven't touched the US dollar unless you actually borrow against it with the Visa side of it. And this would be an argument that would need to be heard, but basically, and I'm not providing tax guidance, and this is a private membership association, but imagine if a loan was taken against it and then paid back, is that income? So,
No,
so there's lots of very important sequences here. And this is not being created for some type of a tax evasion or tax avoidance type strategy. The real value is using a digital asset that can transfer in real time and have full settlement. And that is what we've been doing for years, like 4+ years, all around the world. And the net is, how do you actually come up with liquidity and have it in such a way that the individual is in control of their own world? And what hit me is the linkages between the digital and fiat world, what we're doing within these different ecosystems. And now I'm going to jump. Is there any other feedback on this particular topic, by the way?
Yeah, I got a question for you.
Okay.
At what premium is this being done at? Because if a single goldback is 1/1000th of an ounce of troy ounce of gold, I'm showing a 650 for the South Dakota goldback there, and the troy ounce right now is 2287. So that's a triple premium on the cost of that. Now I know there's a cost to everything, but isn't that kind of an expensive premium to look at?
Yeah, and that's the types of stuff. We haven't gone through all the math on that, but that's exactly what it would need to be. So people could say, you know what? I don't want a goldback format. I just want gold bullion, but I want it in a vault that if I ever wanted it or my creditor ever wanted it, I want it shipped to me. So, and that wouldn't have the same type of uplift that an asset like this would. But that's all three of these questions are brilliant. That's why I love talking to you brilliant folks about it. So, yeah, you're spot on. So there's basically, there's a margin that Clear Finance, and that's what this entity is. Clear Finance would literally have a margin for financing the credit side of it, as well as the digital to asset side of it, and facilitating people to be able to pay paid in an asset that is out of the existing system and hedges on the value of gold. And then fast forward, I think we're going to see some very interesting, I'll jump to an older slide. So when we look at things like this, these are actually, G7 and BRICS. This is 2023 actual market growth and then spending within certain ecosystems. So what's interesting is the comparison between the US and India or China or United Arab Emirates or Iran or Russia or Egypt or Saudi. I mean, think about it. All of those countries I just mentioned grew at a higher rate than the United States of America, which is uncommon. And not only that, but the BRICS-based countries are actually focusing in on not just economic growth, but asset-backed ecosystems. So just kind of think about that for a second. Let's go back over. Let's go back over here. Other feedback or thoughts on this particular strategy. And there's other diagrams. I don't want to show them right now, but I don't want to make it simple. I don't want to spell it out. I want you to think through other topics. So if
Michael, I have another question.
Go ahead.
So am I understanding this right? That even if I pay a premium, let's say for my gold back, this is decentralized and I'm not paying income tax, correct?
Again, we can't provide taxation advice, but what we can do
Right.
is sell you an asset, and that asset can have value that can then be basically digitized and then transferred real time and loaned against if there's still an asset behind it.
So, but it is decentralized, correct?
The digital side of it, yes.
Okay. Okay. So, all right. Okay.
So what you actually get is a physical representation of a digital gold coin, so to speak. That makes sense?
Completely.
Okay.
so it's kind of a NFT.
I
sorts.
wouldn't call it an NFT.
Not at all. Not at all. This is a physical. Some NFT is just No, it's just a pure digital asset. It's backed by something. Now,
Well-
the cost of the backing is something else. Is if it's $2.28 per that 1,000th of a troy ounce, then it's triple the cost.
Well, but
So
one could justify or argue, like the last comment, they could say, hey, if there's a serial number and that serial number is cryptographically linked to it, then a non-fungible token could be construed to be that. The Security and Exchange
Okay.
Go ahead.
no, go ahead. Sorry.
The Security and Exchange Commission basically provided a green light based upon NFTs, primarily because they're looked at like artwork and there's a speculative value. And that's similar to what you're actually seeing here with Goldbacks. So in some ways, the individual that, and I don't know if that was George or Bob, but that comment could be factual. If we were to serialize these assets and link a cryptographic key to the serial number, which actually wouldn't be hard at all. It's the same thing we're doing with vehicles and license plates and VIN numbers. So good comments, both of you. Because
And incidentally, I just because I was looking at this about 2-3 weeks ago, this same one Goldback was about 450. But so in the speculation, it can go up or down in
Yeah.
value.
Yep, that's exactly right. And some people would say, well, I'm actually going to hedge against inflation with this because I'm going to be able to go up with it as the markets go up and the demand goes up, I go up with it. But you've got to look at the spot price of gold and go up with that. And then some people could say, well, no, let's just do gold. And then others could say, does that tie to the NFT concepts? And then, you know, the SEC could say, well, does that even care? Do we even care about NFTs in that realm? So this is really good points. Any other thoughts or feedback or questions or comments? Or there are no dumb questions, by the way.
So we have to get merchants and organizations to come on board and accept the digital payments, the digital.
Yeah, if you don't want to go back to, if you want to stay digital like this and not go into the card format like these,
Yeah.
then yes, that's right. Exactly right.
What would be the advantage if we are going to the card? What would be the advantage of doing this as opposed to just using my Visa card, my regular Visa card that comes from my bank? What's the?
You could actually be, there's different visas, one that's a credit card, one that's a debit card. The debit cards have prepaid debits, and then there is a consumer model and then a business model. And the fees associated with them and the balances or lines associated with them are basically the differences. That's it. So, you know, you could look at it as you actually have a credit line with an asset that is a precious metal and not just a fiat currency. So some people believe that fiat currencies will actually dilute over time because they just continue to create more of them. So especially like the US dollar, it just continues to actually get more created. Therefore, the spending power within each dollar actually is declining. Whereas if you converted it into these types of assets, you would actually not put, from a speculative standpoint, and we don't purport to sell this, but you could possibly be going up with this, with the value of gold. So, and for those of you that have not, you know, my personal perspective is the real value of anything is actually energy. It's not necessarily a precious metal. It's not a mineral. It's energy. And, you know, it takes a certain amount of energy to go and dig up or sift through water or, you know, erode to find or mine to find different precious metals. It's the energy to go and collect them that's the value. It's not the substance of the actual asset, in my opinion. Just like with Bitcoin, the mining process is spending the energy to actually create the cryptographic hex or algorithm that basically then enables the next coin or chain to be created. So it's a gamification around using energy that actually creates the value. So that's why people would hold on to their Bitcoins, because they really had to spend money for a power bill and a miner to actually get it. Most people don't really understand that, but that's the value of the mining process within Bitcoin. But these other assets, they are actually better than Bitcoin because they transfer in real time and have full-time settlement within seconds instead of minutes. But they don't have the creation part of it like what gold or Bitcoin mining does. And so when you link them together, it becomes a real contender for the future of financial systems and monetary systems, which again, that's not something that we're creating today, but the technology in financial systems definitely is there. Imagine you take something like this to a ecosystem like BRICS. So instead of these being states, these be countries. Are lights going on for you? So for those of you that have been with us for a long time, this should answer a lot of the questions that you've had over and over and over and over and over. And it's taken us 4 years to get through the proof of concepts with these to actually get to some of these phases. But I do think it's important in an audience like this to just throw it out there and see what you think. So we're getting close on the time frame of when this needs to become a reality. In October, there's some very key meetings that are happening around the world where these types of things will be defined and adopted. And we hope to be able to be a part of the solutions from a decentralized alternative to a centralized central bank digital currency that's backed by physical assets. So if you don't understand what I'm saying there, there's a lot of countries that are doing that. So any other topics or points that anyone wants to make here before I move to the next topic? Okay. Next topic, Oceanic Coalition. So this basically goes through a lot of these different ecosystems that we just mentioned. Imagine different countries, kingdoms, nations, and these are some of the initial ones that we're currently working with. The systems are not fully deployed for all of these. They are for a couple, but we're grateful for the opportunity to work with the limited few that we've had the opportunity to work with so far. And it looks like it's even growing further than just oceanic, and where multiple oceans can actually connect up, and then where certain parts of those oceans can actually connect up, which here's an example. We won't focus in on that one, even though that's amazing. We're going to focus in on the Pacific ecosystem, whether it's the Pacific Union, whether it's different countries or kingdoms that want to get involved, and additional ones as well, even in other areas like what we're talking about within Utah, Idaho, Oregon, Texan, not Texas, but Texan, Nevada, as well as, believe it or not, California is actually expressing some interest. Who I would have never thought that, but that's happened over the last couple of weeks, where there's actually a new movement within California. And we'll talk a little bit about more of that stuff when it's appropriate. But imagine these digital assets connecting to physical assets that are basically extruded from the earth, whether it's through a bonding process or not, but you actually have real world assets and real world lands that are actually tied to these different assets, such as what we call native, which runs the majority of the digital world ecosystem, that then can convert into other fiat systems or into other digital or material-based systems in different countries and jurisdictions, kind of like what we just talked about, that can also tie into rewards. And those rewards break into categories such as airlines, hotels, cruises, vehicles, insurance, retailers, healthcare, education, and government. So for those of you that are not aware, this last couple weeks, we've actually been going to all these different states, and we've been doing it in such a way where we actually have been using the systems within these jurisdictions around identity and licensing. So we actually are running licenses that are approved within certain regions and intentionally trying to help law enforcement to see them and understand them. And we've had some interesting 3 different interactions, and none of the interactions were there tickets given or arrests made. And in all cases, except for one, would the officers not disclose their names? Think about that. So in this ecosystem here, I'm jumping around. Hopefully you're able to keep up with me. Approved vendors such as Fiji Airways would basically go through a process of approval to say they will accept a decentralized identity. And they will actually provide guidance and training to team members on what a decentralized identity is and how it can be used. Because when you go and jump on a plane, whether you're going to get your boarding pass or check a bag on, or both, they basically go through a process to validate that you can actually get on that flight. And if you don't validate a certain way and you're pushed back, then there's certain liability that can be pushed around. And the goal is to be able to protect the individual that they can actually travel. Otherwise, those that impede the travel are actually violating what's known as a human right for individuals to have 1, privacy, 2, travel. So this ecosystem of what we're calling this Pacific Union would actually have the ability to go through and approve vendors based upon their own forms. So the vendors could say, I'll agree with the identity. Maybe I won't do rewards or payments or dispute agreements, but I'll agree to the identity. And it doesn't matter whether it's, and this is the actual compliance part of it, which we've talked about before. But imagine a form that gets filled out like this, where they just click a couple buttons, upload a logo, sign an agreement, and it's done. It's that simple. And the next thing you know is they basically have opted into a program where the individual's human rights are actually preserved. So won't continue to spend a lot of time on that, but there's a lot of material advancements that are there. There's also a beautiful partner that we hope to work with. I won't spend a lot of time here because it's not appropriate, but yeah. What's some of the advancements we've been able to accomplish within this ecosystem? So the Hawaiian Kingdom, this last week we had the opportunity to meet with, oh boy. By the way, for those of you that are using, let's see, where's this going? For those of you that are using Clear Signal on your desktop, you'll have an upgrade that it will be hitting this next week. I'm going to try and find. No, I'm not going to do that one. Oops.
Michael, we can use Clear Signal on our laptops, like on the Apple.
Yeah.
My laptop.
Yeah.
Okay, and what about Clear Meets? Like I don't want to sign up to Zoom. Can I get Clear Meets to do my meetings?
Not right now, but we.
You
and I talked about that one, but let's just jump in here. So this last week we had a wonderful opportunity to meet with this amazing man, wonderful heart, like a lot of the other individuals that we've had the opportunity to meet with, but he's actually very supportive of the actual licensing process, and we hope to work with. We actually had other dialogue with some of the other kingdoms. So we're trying to get them all aligned to basically accept an aligned system within this basic ecosystem. So, yeah, so a lot of moving parts there, continued advancements here. The asset side of it is where a lot of these different systems are working. So Texan, this is another big one. If you haven't been aware of what's been advancing there, similar to Hawaii, in the same basic 1830 to 1840, there was an annex that was looked at that was very illegal for instance, both the Texas country and the Kingdom of Hawaii were both ecosystems that were own nations, and yet they were annexed as states. So it's where there's foul play, so to speak, is one nation cannot take over another nation without a form of war, etc. And many folks just look at this as though it needs to be undone. We're providing the tools and the technologies to help align them. There's currently 3 different groups within Texas, or the Republic of Texas, and we hope to help them organize, as well as what's going on within the Hawaiian ecosystem. And then for Hawaii and Texans to be able to create treaties, and then also with some of the Hopis, which will provide a little bit more context there. I may have some slides. Well, this is probably this was really a beautiful, and I hope within the next year, this becomes a real serious reality where, the man on the left, Sasha, which I had an opportunity to spend about a week with, who's really, really cares about these different indigenous ecosystems being able to create alignment and primarily help with, the vision of one world, one people, and then tying to grandmothers and mothers with the ability for them to help in other parts of the world. So, so those are some of the advancements. Any thoughts or feedback, comments, recommendations, excitement levels, anything? If not, we'll go ahead and wrap up. Thanks for the feedback on the finance side of things. That was very helpful. So we look forward to spending more time there as things go on. Again, this has a launch of November. There may be some interesting things happening in October, but So we'll go ahead and wrap up if there's no other feedback, and sign off for everyone. So thank you very much. Again, this is April 30th, last day of the month, 2024. See you next week.
Thank you, Michael.